Hey there, I'm Torisaur, and today we're talking about episode 8 of Miraculous Season 6, Vampigami. I think of all of the episodes we've seen from this season thus far, this one is definitely the weirdest. The biggest reason being how many random little things are happening throughout it, though it does highlight a very interesting plot point related to Lila as Chrysalis, which I will definitely share my thoughts on. Spoiler warning for Miraculous Season 6, episode 8, Vampigami, let's get into it. Adrienne is gifted 2 tickets to the Vampire Horrific musical show from his grandparents, and Marinette pretends she no longer hates horror movies in order to spend time with him. Julica and Rose really wanted to see the show but couldn't get tickets, and so the trio of bullies gift new student Prem tickets to take Rose in an attempt to break the girls up. When Prem realizes the hurt he's caused Julica, he gets akumatized into Count Vampigami, a singing dancing vampire that uses his origami to create an army of musical clones. This episode serves as an official introduction to a new character this season, Prem, and the way they choose to introduce him is interesting.
Princess Nora, merci, merci. A shoe cat and green teas at breakfast for free. Vis à toi.
Vis à toi. I think what they were trying to go for with this was highlighting Prem as Indian representation by creating this homage to Bollywood culture, but unfortunately it just feels racist. The fact that Prem's introduction is boiled down to a stereotypical representation of his culture feels gross, especially because it's so extremely jarring. Like, the lights suddenly go out in the cafeteria and we're in this trippy music video all of a sudden that ends as abruptly as it began, and I think it's trying to establish the way that Prem refers to everyone as prince or princess. But the scene of him interacting with everyone immediately following this impromptu music video does a perfectly fine job of that. I don't know, I'm not Indian and I'm not very personally familiar with Indian culture, so I could be overthinking how offensive this is, but it feels really weird and unnecessary. Like, they can have Indian representation without making a caricature out of it. Let me know if I'm overreacting here or if it is as weird as I think it is. In general, I don't love how they chose to use Prem in this episode. Like, he is immediately introduced as a rival to Julica, and the whole plot that leads to his akumatization is his guilt surrounding Julica's jealousy. Especially when Pigella's gift implies that maybe Prem does have a thing for Rose, which I think is just so unnecessary. I did not like how they gave Julica and Rose this jealousy plot, especially because this is the first episode that has been specifically dedicated to their romantic relationship. The way Rose acts in this episode also feels really out of character. Like, Rose has been established as being very good at picking up on how Julica is feeling, and the multiple instances of Julica saying you can go with Prem while being very clearly upset by it without Rose noticing are really frustrating. Also, a random note about Rose, which I talked about when this episode first came out, but her hair is revealed to be a wig in the cold open. Before Vampigami, people were complaining that you couldn't say Rose's hair looks bad because she has cancer, which I think was a really silly argument when, even if Rose was experiencing hair loss, which we didn't know until Vampigami came out, this busted haircut has nothing to do with that. Even if her hair is thinning and falling out, they could style it in a way that doesn't look like this. My issue is more specifically with the way each individual section of hair is modeled that I think looks really bad and off from the way other characters' hair is modeled. But it isn't even Rose's actual hair, it's a wig, which gives it looking bad even less of an excuse because she could have just chosen a wig that looks better.
There, we can just adjust the length further if you want.
No, it's perfect.
The only reason I've grown to tolerate her hair this season is my personal headcanon that the reason Rose's wig looks like this is because it's made with her original hair, and it's so short and choppy because they had a limited amount of hair to work with that Rose had saved. But otherwise, I'm still perfectly fine to say that I really do not like Rose's hair. I still think it looks really bad. But back to the Julerose drama, it feels like the only thing they know how to do with Julica is emphasize her insecurity and struggles to stand up for herself. And look, Julica is my favorite character in part due to these struggles. The portrayal of her anxiety is relatable and really well done, but I wish they did more with her outside of this role. I guess I'm being overly critical because the previous episode does showcase Julica in a positive light by having her perform this song for Miss Bustier, but that also ties into another insecurity plot with Julica, and El Toro de Piedra isn't a Julica-centric episode. The one thing I do really appreciate about how they handle Julica's insecurity and seemingly regressing in her growth is that it is tied to Luca leaving.
What if she left me someday like you did? What if she found someone better than me? Someone who's like her, someone she can share everything with.
However, like I said, I wish Julica could be highlighted in more positive ways outside of that insecurity. And despite the conflict of the episode centering around Julica and Rose's relationship, it's overshadowed by serving as a parallel to Marinette and Adrienne. Both Julica and Marinette are struggling with a similar insecurity where they fear that if their partner does things without them, they won't love them anymore. And while Julica's insecurity is explained by Luca's absence, Marinette is just being her usual chaotic, quirky self. And I think this episode is a prime example of the instances in which Marinette's behavior isn't funny or endearing, it's just exhausting to watch. The way she repeatedly lies about loving horror movies despite being given opportunity after opportunity to come clean makes the whole episode really tiring. And then when she finally does tell Adrienne the truth, it feels like such a random moment.
I'll go with Rose.
No, you stay. I'll go.
No, this is an important moment for you and your grandparents.
You're gonna miss the movie.
It's okay, I already hate it anyway.
But
Adrienne, you were right all along. I still don't like horror movies.
I'm guessing what they were going for was seeing how Rose and Julica had a similar conflict and Marinette realizing that she needed to chill out, which is supported by the end of the episode.
Rose is right. Just because you don't do everything together doesn't mean that you love each other less.
But the moment they chose specifically doesn't communicate that well enough to justify her suddenly deciding to be truthful after vehemently lying repeatedly about loving horror movies up to this point. In any case, the parallel they draw between Marinette and Adrienne's relationship and Julica and Rose's relationship very much overshadows the latter. And I get that they're the main characters, but we really did not need another episode of Marinette being chaotically insecure. Outside of this main plot of the episode, Marinette and Adrienne continue to be adorable. The opening scene where Natalie is exhausted but amused by their lovey-dovey bullshit is super sweet.
I've missed you so much.
I've missed you too.
You saw each other at school yesterday.
I also love that we're seeing a follow-up on Adrienne forging a relationship with his grandparents. It's so nice to see supportive family members in his life after the nonsense he's had to deal with this whole series. As far as the akumatization goes, it's fine. It does very much feel like a classic Miraculous villain with Vampigami turning people into his clones, and the music that plays throughout is really fun. I do wish Purple Tigress and Pigella did more. We didn't get a transformation sequence from either of them, and they just used their superpower once and then he was defeated. It felt very generic and like any of the other Miraculous could have been there, and the only reason these two were chosen was because they were otherwise featured in the episode. This ties back to my issues with the Julerose plot in general, where it feels like they weren't highlighted as much as they could have been for an episode that was dedicated to them. And this is a direct consequence of the biggest reason I describe this episode as weird, where it's doing way too many things at once. You have Prem's introduction, the trio of bullies enacting another plan to break up a couple, Julica's insecurity, Marinette's nonsense, and finally the plot I haven't even touched on yet, that being Lila trying to confirm her suspicions of Ladybug's identity, which I will get to shortly. But with all of these story beats happening at once, it made the entire episode feel cluttered and like it didn't have a concrete direction, which made it kind of a slog to get through. However, the one thing that does save this episode for me is the Lila trying to confirm Ladybug's identity plot.
Cat Noir, the new holder of the Miraculous, is not trying to defeat us by using their akumatized villains to fight us. They want to defeat us by figuring out who we really are.
Based on the title, I figured Vampigami would be related to this since it is a spiritual successor to season 4's Optigami. I love the way Lila specifically locks everyone in the theater and brings an Akuma with her to stage the akumatization in such a way that she can try to catch Marinette transforming. And it nearly works. Marinette almost transforms before Tiki notices the camera and tells her to stay quiet and pretend to be scared.
Be quiet, Marinette. Don't say a word, and whatever you do, do not transform. There's a video camera above.
This plan also specifically highlights that Lila already suspects Marinette specifically as Ladybug and is determined to prove it.
It has to be her. It's the only logical explanation.
If it were her, she would have transformed right there and then.
It's not possible. It has to be her.
You have to explore other avenues, Lila.
Yaxi Gozen also shows Lila and Tomoe working together, but there it feels much more transactional, while here it seems to be establishing a deliberate partnership, especially with Lila telling Tatsu, Mrs. Tsurugi's car, to take her home. Honestly, my only complaint with this plot is that it wasn't a bigger part of the episode. Optigami from season 4 is very focused on its premise of using the titular Senti monster to spy around and discover Ladybug's identity. Vampigami shares the origami theme, which ties to the main plot point of trying to unmask Ladybug. But it's such a minor focus of the episode compared to everything else that's going on, which I have already critiqued. However, they're definitely trying to be much more secretive with Chrysalis as opposed to Hawkmoth, whose motivations and plans were laid out pretty deliberately, so I understand why they didn't go more into depth with this plot point. In any case, I'm really looking forward to how this is going to play out because Marinette is in a very dangerous situation. I think the fact that she's so distracted by keeping Monarch's identity secret from Adrienne is going to lead her to make more mistakes that will get her into serious trouble, potentially resulting in her identity being exposed or even getting akumatized. I know there have been some recent trailers for later episodes that could potentially relate to this plot. Please don't comment anything about episodes that come after Vampigami, especially unreleased or recently released released episodes. But I do think this plot point being established in Vampigami will probably tie into the conflicts being alluded to in those episode trailers. Overall, I think Vampigami is definitely one of the weakest episodes from this season. I like it slightly more than Sublimation because of the Lila plot, and Marinette's behavior in Vampigami isn't as painful as it is in Sublimation, but I do think it is my second least favorite season 6 episode. It has too much going on, most of which I don't care for or actively find frustrating. However, I still think the majority of season 6 is very solid, and I am very much looking forward to the new episodes coming out soon. Speaking of, I am currently planning to review each new episode as soon as I can after it releases in English, but outside of that, I will continue reviewing the episodes I have yet to talk about, which includes Yaxi Gozen, Grand Diaper, and Noe. So make sure to subscribe so you can catch all of those reviews when they come out. Please consider supporting the LEGO Ideas project linked in the description. It is completely free to do, and I would really appreciate your support. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and hype if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time.